Okay, so I'm taking a page out of Isk's handbook and making a kind of commentary, recording a kind of commentary on the first session of the Slaying Stone that we had. I just want to try it out to see what it's like, except it's not going to be like an hour or 2 hours. It's probably going to be more like 15 minutes. I'm just going to ramble on a little and give my reflections on what happened after we played. And I'm not going to go over like read the chat or whatever because I always thought that was boring. What's the point? I just played the game. What's the point of seeing it? Somebody read it back to me. It's already all in my head. I can go into the chat archives if I want. It is good for like checking it, months later as an archive, but it's not something that you would like release and then expect everyone to just go watch right away. The thing that always interested me is hearing the analysis of what was done. Like, how what was good, what was bad, what worked, what didn't, what kind of things were funny, what kind of things were frustrating, and like the things going on behind the scenes, like my mindset and mentality behind it. So that's the kind of thing I'm going to go into. Uh, like starting with why I even decided to do this. So this all kind of started with I've been talking with Schwa for a long time about like D&D Fourth Edition in this other game, in this other Discord I made. It's like I made it for a campaign I was running called Barter and Blood, and that was for Schwa and Mesk, and I kind of did that out of like Mesk kept complaining that nobody ever wants to play with him and that he's never going to play again, and like why he should just kill himself or whatever. So I was like, okay, look, I'm running this game already for Labyrinth. I was already running for Labyrinth as friends, and I decided to make like a copy of it and then run the same thing for him. But of course, it's going to be a little different. It's just the same starting point. Once the players get into the adventure, then pretty much anything goes. And it did diverge way differently in Labyrinth's game. They jumped 50 years into the future to the point where the bad guys had already won, and now they're trying to pick up the pieces. In the game with Mesk and Schwa, it was much more like a wilderness survival type thing. But anyway, he ended up rage quitting that game, Mesk that is. He just dropped one day because it was taking too long to schedule a session or something. I don't know. I didn't bother trying to talk him off the ledge this time because it's so exhausting doing it all the time. But that kind of led me to think, okay, I had a chance to try out playing with Schwa, and I could tell that she's actually a good player. Like I could see the potential. I usually have a good eye for talent, and I could see that she could be a good player in our group. And I remembered how she kept talking about how she missed playing Fourth Edition. And then I also remembered KT and I would also talk a lot. And KT loves tactical games like Pathfinder or Mathfinder as I like to call it. But I know he likes tactical games. I thought, wait, KT and Schwag would be perfect for this game, and then I also realized Mookie would also be perfect for it because he loves tactical games. So this would be a perfect chance to throw them in there and let them kind of play with each other and have a chance to try out this new system, which is something I want to do because I haven't had a chance to ever try it. And since I only started playing D&D with 5th edition, like years before in like high school, people would play 3.5 in Pathfinder, but it scared me off because the only players that would ever play it are rules lawyers, and they'd come in there with like 18 different books that are like 500 pages each. So that kind of like put me off from D&D for like years and years because I kept thinking, okay, well, if I'm going to be like arguing for like every little advantage and power level, I'll just play Magic the Gathering because that's the same thing except it's an actual competitive game instead of taking a game that's supposed to be cooperative storytelling and turning it into like a fake competitive game. What's even the point? Then they released 5th edition and they advertised it by saying, "Oh, it's streamlined and we're taking it back to its roots and it's going to be more modular and like the DM makes rulings instead of being shackled like some sort of computer running an algorithm, which is the game system." So that made me interested, and then one day I happened to see it at Barnes and Noble where they had the starter set. I went over, I picked it up. It was only $20, and that's when I started playing. So actually, now I kind of regret not getting into it earlier because I miss. There's people who say, "Oh, I started playing when I was 20, or I started playing when I was 15." I'm like 30 now. That could have been 15 years of playing D&D, but instead it's only been like 5 years. So now I like to read about old systems to kind of see What did I miss out? What can I get ideas from? I like to see other DMs and other systems and absorb their good ideas and make them my own. That's why I would sometimes spectate on Isk games, because I didn't really like playing, but even in his game, which I didn't like playing in, I could see things that were good ideas. So I could take them and then apply whatever lessons I learned to myself. It's kind of like, you know, normal people learn from their own mistakes. Smart people learn from other people's mistakes. So that's what I try to do. But yeah, so I got KT, Schwa, Mookie. I know Steak's been dying to play, so I roped him into it. So I already instantly knew that these four people would be the one in this game. Like, I never make a game without already having a potential player group in mind. You don't just make the game and throw it out there. Then you don't even know. It's like getting in the car for a vacation when you don't know where you're going to go. You're just driving randomly. Then Tharaxel doesn't have his going away work right now that ties him down all the time, so I decided to throw him into. But if he ends up not being able to, I did that with the knowledge that eventually he's going to have to go away for his archaeological trip. And if that's the case, I don't want to stop the game. So he's in here as long as it's good to have him. But if he has to leave for work, then I'll just figure a way out to make it so he can play without having to stop. So that way he can still play all he wants, but we're not also like hampered by it. Anyway, so to get to the actual game, when we first started, the thing I enjoyed the most was literally 5 seconds into the game when the party's getting together for the usual, uh, everybody's awkwardly making their introductions. Who's this character? Who's that character? That's usually a point where people kind of get stuck. You don't know what to say. You don't even really know what your character is yet, unless you're like Ryu and like pre-plan the entire thing going back 10 years. So you don't know anything, and it's always awkward and slow. One way people get around that is by having you write in bonds to other characters. So you might say, "This isn't the first time we've met. This is like we're best friends already," or "They're my kid," or "I'm their teacher." That can work, but I've noticed in theory it's a good idea, but in practice I've noticed people kind of like they don't know how to deal with it. They take that they say, okay, they're my best friend, but then when they actually play, they don't play it out. They just want to pretend otherwise. I've never seen it really work that well. I still want to try it more, but people tend to not really actually pay attention to it. It's just kind of something you say. But in this case, within like seconds, Mucky and Thalraxel just dove right into role playing, which I was impressed by. And then Schwa and KT and Steak kind of joined in later, but it wouldn't have happened without those two pushing things along. Like the first thing, one of the things Mucky said was like he had his character ask Schwa about how hard her character's hands were because he's like this Goliath from the mountains. They're all kind of like burly and rough and tough. And then you have this druidic type person who's from nature, so it's like the opposite. And that prompted her to make up her, started a conversation. Uh, yeah, and then another thing I liked was that everybody went through the effort of making their character's backstory and profile before the game, which at least gives, you are meeting for the first time, but at least the profile gives you something to work with if you see other people's profiles. And it also shows a level of investment. Like, when somebody doesn't take the 5 minutes to write like a 2 paragraph profile, when I'm over here killing myself until like 4 in the morning to set up these games, I'm like, what the hell? What was even the point? Why is this person in the game if they can't even do that? It doesn't make sense to me. Although in this case, I can make an exception because it was very short notice. We started like I gave like 4 days notice and then that was it. But generally, I think a lot of those, I'm gonna probably start making it like a mandatory requirement. Like you can't even join or start the game until that stuff's done. Because it's not your sheet, your mechanics aren't the only thing that's your character. Your backstory, your profile, your flavor, that's all arguably more important. If you have a certain like feat that gives you a +2 to your attack, that's great and all, but that's not what anybody's gonna remember. They're gonna remember that you are like a prince from hell or something. It's your story. Uh, but yeah, everybody did it, and I've started offering experience for that. Yeah. What else? Oh, I realized while reviewing our tactics, because there was a lot of in fourth edition. There's so much stuff going on. I can't keep track of it as the dungeon master, so I have to rely on the players to call it out now. Like when it's something triggers an ability, they got to be on top of that, which means you have to pay attention during other people's turns, or you're gonna miss your chance, which is better than just tapping out or whatever. But we forgot about flanking. The whole fight we didn't use any flanking, and we forgot about uh what was the other thing we forgot? Flanking and cover. There was a cover with if you're firing a ranged attack and your ally is in the way, like you're trying to shoot past them, you should be trying to shoot past cover. The defender should get cover. So that's going to be a thing going forward if I actually remember it. But as far as like tactics went, I enjoyed the new fourth edition abilities like shifting and like the bloodied mechanic and also like triggered abilities. It makes it more. There's a lot more stuff going on that you could play with. I had fun with that. I also had fun with the fact that, or I enjoyed. I was like giggling on the inside that the instant we started the game, Mucky, Tharaxel, Steak. Well, not Steak, although I think he could tell, but he didn't say anything. KT, they instantly recognized the setup I did because it was the same as from a previous game. So Schwa wouldn't know this, but there was a previous campaign I did with Mucky and Tharaxel that and KT and that Steak read the entire thing called Fist of Fury, and it's still going, but I need to. After this short campaign is over, I'm going to go back to that. I guarantee it. Like I'm not going to let it die. But that's how that one started. And the instant it started, same music, same noble courtyard, same thing where you're meeting up in this ostentatious garden, waiting for the noble to address you. They instantly remembered, which is fun because it was years ago. Mm. Let's see what else. Speaking of that, you also fight the Shield Knight in Fist of Fury when the game began. I decided they kind of like just steamrolled him in Fist of Fury. Like he didn't even stand a chance. He got annihilated so bad that Gearwind fired him along with his partner. This time I wanted to make him. I knew what could happen, and I had way more fourth edition mechanics. I decided to actually like take an extra time to make sure that he could stand up to the party, and he still kind of got steamrolled, but not as bad. Like Schwa's character Saya actually called for like a ceasefire or like a mercy, ending the duel because he was going to get destroyed. And if she hadn't done that, then he would have gotten fired again. But since she did, he just kind of, it was a draw. In other words, but they proved their point, and he didn't get annihilated. But the way I was going to play him was have him. He has triggered abilities that take place. He gets a free attack every time somebody makes an attack of opportunity on him. So I was going to have him just run around everybody. And then they're going to take an attack of opportunity, because why wouldn't they? And even if they know he's going to do something, they can't resist that sweet damage. So they would have done it, and then he would have gotten a free attack. So I wouldn't have, instead of just one monster doing either one attack per turn, which is an easy way. If they only do one attack, they're going to get annihilated because they're outnumbered. But if he's doing all these free counterattacks from getting attack of opportunities, then it could be a huge amount, especially since in 4th edition, you could make one attack of opportunity per turn, per character. It's not per round. So I could just constantly go around on different people's turns, especially since he had like a movement option. Problem is, Monkey's character, Dagbert, grappled him like the whole fight. So I couldn't do anything except these circular Zelda swinging style attacks and bashes, which all failed miserably. So history repeated itself, but I didn't mind. It was okay. Aside from the fact that everybody was missing, like, goddamn, I wanted the whole time for somebody to hit them so I could do something with the counterattack, but they kept missing, so I was like, great. Yeah, I think that's all I have for this. We're just kind of rambling on with my brain dump. Next session is going to be probably about the same length, and I'm going to try to, since I'm trying to keep it on a certain schedule, these are going to be more episodic in quality. They're going to be more, instead of just like Fists and Lost Mines of Phandelver and the other games where I just throw you into a tavern and let you talk and do whatever you want until you want to leave. In other words, I leave the pacing to you. You could spend like 4 sessions just talking in a tavern. It doesn't matter. In this case, I'm jumping from scene to scene. So like we're gonna, instead of making you go shopping for items and making you like meet NPCs and arrange it, we're just doing that off screen. We're skipping straight to when you're leaving town a week later. we're gonna get to the next plot point. Basically, there's still room for maneuvering, but I'm basically cutting out the fat, and it's also going to be much more narrative in structure. Like I don't know if it'll actually turn out that way, but I have like there'll be arcs and things like that. So that's it. Oh, and if people make summaries, they'll get 100 experience each because it does take a lot longer to level up in fourth edition. Like in fifth edition, it takes 300 experience. You guys would have leveled up already. In fourth edition, it takes 1,000 just for level one, and it goes higher from there. So these little bonus experience points can help cut it down a lot because otherwise you're just going to be getting experience for the monsters you defeat and like little quests you solve. That's going to be like 100 or 200 a session, and then you divide it by 5. So the biggest chunk of experience you'll get without any division is actually from the summaries. Write those summaries, people.